Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Busy. I hope you enjoyed today's story. And if you do, please subscribe. Here we go. Hi, everybody. We're in the holiday season now. It's so exciting. And today I have my dear friend Amanda Thomson back from the founder of Noughty, which I actually have right next to me, three different
Woohoo!
kinds of Noughty,
Oh,
non-alcoholic.
one's not.
Oh no. Oh my gosh, that is not. Oh my
That
gosh.
was perfect.
Oh
I
my
love
gosh,
that.
wasn't that perfect? I was like, wait a minute, I have all this non-alcoholic. Here it is. Here is the sparkling Chardonnay.
Nice.
And then I have the sparkling rosé.
Perfect.
I am so happy to see you.
Set.
Welcome back.
Thank you. And I can't believe it's been nearly a year.
Can you believe it's been a year?
Crazy.
What has happened? Tell us what's gone on in the past year.
So
Because
much has happened. So
Tell us what
much.
has happened, because you were at that point a year ago. You were the number one non-alcoholic wine and champagne by U.S. News and World Report.
That was incredible. And now we're building out across America in Sprouts and also in Total Wine. So we're becoming a lot easier to get with your weekly shopping, which is kind of a big deal for us in the US. Yeah, things have been busy as ever, but you know how it is, Lizzie. I never want to say that word. It's the kind of, it used to be like, "How are you?" Fine, and now it's like, "How are you?" Busy, and of course,
Right.
I'm finding a nice way to get to get a plug for even for your name and podcast in there. But no, I think it's been exciting. It's been hard work. But if I reflect back on the year, yeah, we've achieved a lot of our goals and still got plenty more to shoot for, I guess.
It's crazy the world we're living in now, in that so many people are turning to the non-alcoholic space.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I think we dug into this on our last meeting, how many people are choosing not to drink entirely. And more interestingly for me in the Venn diagram, and something we got into, that piece of blended drinking or substitutional drinking. So either kind of having some days when you're not drinking and some when you are, or blending. I mean, I'm a blender. I'll perhaps have one glass. Last night I was at dinner and I had one glass of Noughty, and then I shift to other way round. One glass of alcoholic wine and shift to Noughty. That way round. Either way. And it's really interesting. I think the normalization, I think, is a really key part of that. And we kind of say we're a wine brand that happens to be non-alcoholic. I think we mentioned when we were discussing before that anyone not drinking, thankfully, found us so quickly, and I'll be forever grateful. And then how do we really grow it out? We kind of introduce Noughty to any wine lover's world, and then you're making a health choice without even realizing, which for me is where the really exciting kind of huge growth can happen, if that makes sense.
And have you had any challenges this past year with the brand? I'd love to
Where do
hear
I
it.
start? I think I always, as an entrepreneurial businesswoman, I think challenge, I think, needs to become part of your DNA. I think for anyone asking me about entrepreneurship, I'm assuming you'd agree, but interrupt me if you don't. I think that the sorts of terms and situations we would use relating to challenge in the beginning of a business journey today will be very different. So I might just think of them as usual day-to-day activities. So I think it's all about the framing. But yeah, I mean, there's constant challenges in any stage of business. I think what's interesting for us now is we're what they call a scale up business. So we've proved our success, we're making revenue, we're profitable. How do we become a household name? I mean, that's quite a seismic leap now for us. How do we really become a household name? But the fact that that's even possible as a realistic goal to say out loud, I guess, shows how many mini mountains we've overcome as a brand. But I think the goalposts just keep moving. We just see the challenges as more achievable. I'm keen to hear your point of view on that.
I just love that today so many people for whatever reason, it's an option and there's a good option
Right.
out there. And I love that about Naughty and having and knowing that that you got on I'm going to just use the freeway. Like you got on at the right time and
Yeah.
you are at like things are happening and that it is a household, everybody I'm hoping that it's going to become a household brand because when I was younger, all we could drink was that Marinelli's, which Martinelli's, which was a sparkling apple juice, which really didn't taste that great.
Right. I'm not familiar, but I know of it.
Okay, yes. So when I was first, I've been sober 18 years. So, and
Mhm.
having that is my mom would get it at like the holidays. And here we are and going, oh my gosh, all right, well, I want Elizabeth to have something. Let's get her the Martinelli's. And now you're one of the like the spearheads that went out there and did something that was totally different and said, you know what? I'm going to make a really, really good non alcoholic champagne.
Yeah.
And, and,
Yeah.
and knowing and having those accolades as you go, especially as an entrepreneur, gives you the sign that you are on the right path.
Right. Well, I really thank people like you for cheerleading. It means everything. And it's fascinating when I speak to people like you who really were on that journey early of not drinking and you've been through, the iterations. And I guess you touched on something interesting to me, which is sugar. And I think that will be the next growth in conversation with non-alcoholic beverages because I think, and this is not to do other brands down at all, we only ever speak about us. Noughty is low in sugar, and I think it's really important. I do speak to quite a few people who are switching up or drinking less and then turning to various non-alcoholic options, but just be aware of your sugar levels because I just think replacing alcohol with sugar, I mean, from a sort of nutrition perspective, I'm not sure which is worse. I mean, neither are great for you. Sugar, I believe, should be consumed respectfully in pastries. I don't want sugar in my drinks. And I think you don't want to replace that alcohol thing with a sugar addiction. So just be mindful with the brands you're drinking, be choosy. And I think, fortunately or unfortunately, depending which way you look at it, and I always say, if the cheaper version has got a lot of sugar and chemicals in, just take one bottle of the slightly more expensive version and you're doing yourself a favor, not just on taste, quality, but also on just not consuming those levels of sugar or chemicals. So I guess price point is often an indicator of not just the qualitative piece, but also how much they've tricked it up with sugar, exactly like cheap alcoholic wine. It's no different really in that regard.
It's interesting. I'm actually looking to see if this book I have it up there, but I don't see it. So, do you know who Casey Means is? She just
No.
came out with a book about, and now I'm gonna have to look it up. I have to look it up while we're talking. And so Casey Means has this book, and she talks about sugar as being so poisonous to our body, even though it's in everything. What is that? Why is it? Why? And it's literally killing us. And her book is called, here it is. Um, she did a book with her brother, and it's called, bear with me, everybody. She's an MD, Good Energy. Here it is, Good Energy.
Right.
And she's been on, Joe Rogan's podcast. She's been on Tucker Carlson, and she's been talking to people about how all the stuff that is in what we're putting in our bodies, we don't know, right? We don't know where these like the sugar cane, the corn syrup, all that is laced in all these foods, and we don't know because we just go in blind thinking what everything that's up here, if it's FDA approved, then it has to be good for us. But that isn't always the case.
That's an exceptionally good point. And also, I think it's really unfair that we put the onus on consumers to be analyzing all this stuff. Going back to that busy word, everybody watching your podcast who we know is leading a busy life. And we haven't got time as consumers to be constantly worrying about that along with everything else. So that's why once you find a brand that you like and trust, and hopefully that goes some way to the reason that we're increasingly successful is I've done everything I can to create not just a qualitative, great tasting non-alcoholic drink, but to be organic where possible, to be low in sugar, to not pack it full of things that you don't want to have in your food or drink. And so I think that's really important as somebody leading a brand. And that's why I'm just saying, find a shortcut where you can, but it is worth just checking an ingredients label just for 5 seconds to make sure that you're not kind of getting all of those unnecessary awful things while cutting your alcohol.
So I want to tell, so somebody might be listening today that didn't listen a year ago because, right, some people come and they go. And so this was a year ago. I think it was back in, I don't even know what number episode it was that you were on, but we're almost at 500 now. So tell the listener, what made you give us a brief reasoning? Because I know
Sure.
we went through it last time, but why you started this. And I want to make, because I just I was in April, I was in Europe for a month, and I could tell that the food over there is different than the food in the US.
Wow.
It tastes healthier. I ate sweets, but I walked all the time. I lost weight when I was in Europe, and I swear I
Wow.
ate way more than I eat when I'm here. And the champagne is made in, where is
Oh,
Naughty
my
made?
naughty.
Yes.
So I'm making the sparkling in Germany with southern Spanish grapes, organic, and I think the organic piece is really important. Each country has a different stipulation for organic, and it basically means that you're not using all those unnecessary pesticides, things that you don't want to be consuming as a consumer that we don't even know about. The things that, like they're talking about in the anti-sugar book, lots of things that if we had the time to read up on what they actually are and what they might do to us, we would be consuming less of it. But because we've got busy lives, we don't have time. So the organic process in Germany is really stringent. I think it might even be the most stringent in the world. So what that means is that we are not using nasty things in our wine. So I think that's why it's really pure. We're only adding a small amount of sugar, and we're not tricking it up with anything secret, some of those funny names you see on ingredients lists. And that purity piece is really important. And I think you touched on something very interesting that I guess is more of an esoteric conversation, but I guess a lot of these strange chemicals, that they're in bread, for example, in our everyday bread to keep it fresh for longer than,
Right.
longer than
Right.
one day. Because why do the French buy their bread every day from the bakery? Because technically you don't want that preservative. I guess all these things are contributing to bloating, not feeling healthy, feeling tired, um, and so how do we take the shortcuts? I guess too easy conceptual shortcuts, hard to execute, hard to cut your alcohol and cut your sugar. And so my history actually was I had a plant-based sort of health foodie mother in the 70s, which I can tell you, going back to you not drinking alcohol for 18 years, being a vegetarian in the 70s was a whole different ball game. I mean, she was really into produce back then, and that was really hard. And I remember white bread was my crack cocaine, it's like, but so it was always in my DNA just to be very thoughtful about what I was consuming. Anyway, I can't profess to having in my teenage years and 20 something always being so. I certainly wasn't angelic, but I guess it was in my DNA. And I worked in the arts space for the BBC, and champagne became my buzz back in the day. We used to work hard and play hard. There was no social media, kids. We were Gen X, partying when no one was looking. And champagne was my buzz. And I always romanticized working with fine wine, particularly champagne. And I was like, well, how do I make that leap? Anyway, cut an extremely long story short for another podcast. I moved to Paris and studied fine wine at Cordon Bleu, gained a diploma, launched a champagne brand first, and then realized there was nothing for me to drink when I wasn't drinking. And what I mean by that, Lizzie, was unlike you, I still did drink the occasional glass of fine wine, but I wasn't really a big drinker. So it wasn't like every evening I would be drinking wine. Sometimes I didn't want to drink wine. Sometimes I recognized that perhaps it didn't serve me. Sometimes it would affect my sleep. And I was like, well, where is the drink I can enjoy socially when I'm not drinking fine wine? And that was when that kind of obsessional search started around the world to see whether anyone was making non-alcoholic wine that I would be happy with. And that was when I realized that the gap was wide open. There were a few makers around the world doing bits and bobs, but as I saw it, no one had created a really good portfolio of wines that could sit elegantly alongside traditional fine wine, but also serve that purpose of being that kind of moment that I loved about wine, but without the alcohol. So that was the concept. The concept of execution, I can tell you, was exceptionally hard. Compared with champagne, when I met all the champagne makers, and you're kind of spoilt for choice, there's some wonderful makers who just didn't get cut through. When I was tasting all of the non-alcoholic wines around the world, it was actually quite upsetting and depressing because I wasn't very excited about very much. So it kind of convinced me that if I could find the right makers and I could perfect the recipe, that I might be in business. So that was really the potted history.
And how was it in the UK to introduce this? Because culturally and in Europe, you can drink. There is no age. Is there? There's no
There's
limit.
an age, but it's younger, so it's 18.
Okay.
UK, Europe, there's a bit of complication over ages. Obviously, America's 21, we're 18, but there's a bit of a grey area over like beer with parents when you're eating. So there's a few grey areas, but I think technically we say not for under 18s. But we've gone as a brand, we say we're an adult beverage, and because America's our biggest market, we've always said not for under 21s. And actually, there's a lot of kind of controversy over this in the non-alcoholic drink space because a lot of people are like, well, but it's got no alcohol. Our brand is wine aligned, so for me it's comfortable selling to grown-ups, for the reason that it looks like wine. It was wine, albeit before the alcohol was removed. So I have no desire to or frustration over the fact that I'm not sort of selling or promoting to younger people. That was always my strategy, was to create an adult beverage.
I love that because I think that there has to be a time just for adults, right?
Absolutely. We all know that, especially if anyone's a parent.
But if a child were to drink it, it's not like, when I was little, my parents would have a cocktail party and I'd, go drink all the leftover drinks as a little girl, like, oh, I'm just going to taste this. And a little kid tastes this. With this, they're not going to have any mind altercations with them or fall down drunk and start blah, 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 blah. No,
No, exactly.
no.
Exactly. But
Um,
but but your point about Europe was an interesting one. Actually, New York Times wrote about us really early, and then the media started to talk about us. We were on Good Morning America, and actually, because my brand really grew up during COVID, and we just got our first New York distributor, actually America took off really fast. So even though my home is still the UK and we're a London-based brand, we're in America all the time. I'm spending a lot of time in America. We've got a team in America. So actually, we're kind of America first in that regard, in that it's our biggest market and our key market.
so wait, do Europeans aren't interested in drinking it or what is it?
Sure, no, I sell a lot in the UK. I'm selling here. You've got a big country, and each state is, the way we look at it from a sales perspective, and I think this is a smart way for entrepreneurs, is state by state, not countrywide, a bit like your
Right.
laws, the way it works. And so I mean, the American people and media just really fell in love. People like you. I've got kind of naughty friends around America that I developed really early online with the brand. And it just really grew up that way. We have a great presence across the UK and particularly in London. But actually, it's America where things really got exciting pretty quickly.
Now, what about Italy?
I sell, I mean, I might sell like 10 cases a year in Italy.
Really? Why? What do you attribute that to?
It's an interesting one. I mean, we're sort of building out in the wine space. I'm not for a moment saying plenty of Italians aren't turning to certain non-alcoholic drinks, and there may well be brands that are really targeting Italy. I think that what you've got with America and London, which is kind of famous for it, are not all of America. So let's say New York, LA, wherever, certain cities, Austin, um, where trends can be built. And I
Yes.
guess in many ways, our brand is future facing. I'm
Right.
selling a lot now, and I'm very successful now. But the huge growth piece is always kind of tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. In that it's easy in our little bubble for me to go, oh, look how successful I am. I'm talking with Lizzie on her brilliant podcast, and everything's going gangbusters. You know, if I were to compare with, I guess, America's most famous winery, or my numbers are big, but they're nothing near where they could be. And so we've not reached a sort of mainstream tipping point yet. We're kind of still for the early adopters. You know, you have to be a bit of a thought leader to be thinking about an adult non-alcoholic beverage. And of course, I'm not for a moment saying there aren't amazing thought leaders in Italy and everywhere, but I guess just the way that our brand has grown up fast is, you know, London, US. It's just the way that trend piece has grown. Might Italy soon be a growth market? I don't know. I can't really answer that question. I'm not sure.
It's so interesting. It seems like it's a trend with the younger generation to be sober. And how are you going to target those younger people, like college age students? I
So
know that there is a non-alcoholic, for I'm going to say it wrong, for Girlo. It's
oh,
kind of supposed to taste like gin. It's made in Scotland,
so
and
for Gaia,
yes,
Gaia.
Gaia. You
I
pronounce
think it's
that.
like I think it's like a whiskey they're
It is.
trying to.
It's like a
Yeah,
non-alcoholic whiskey.
yeah.
And the young gentleman that invented it, he came on the show, and he went to the University of Alabama. And so now it's at some of the bars at the University of Alabama. But it has become an alternative for this younger generation. College students are realizing that when they get to campuses here in the US, especially, they're getting to these college campuses and they're realizing I can't drink. Like at first, some kids are like, "Oh, I'm going to go gung ho." And soon after they crash and burn and realize, because they go so big and so hard, and then they go, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this. What am I going to drink instead?" And like, if you had Noughty around when I was in college, I mean, I didn't go to college in a rural town. I went to college in Washington, D.C. And so, but at my local bars that I went to with all my girlfriends all the time had this option that you could be out and having a Noughty instead of having, whatever I was going to have, Pinot Grigio or, Beaujolais Visage or whatever I was going to have. Or a martini, whatever it was, to have this option, I think on college campuses, bars would be amazing. In
Yeah,
sorority houses in the South,
yeah.
they still. I mean, it's kind of nice that the Southern people still have dinner parties like we used to have in, as grown-ups. Remember, we used to have dinner parties all the time, invite everybody over. I mean, I still do, thank goodness. But for these younger people that don't want to have alcohol, but they want a wonderful product. What stands in your way, do you think, of getting to those people?
It's an interesting question, and I guess the easiest way to reach them is social media. And I've just been working recently with the Gary Vaynerchuk team, and that's been exciting. He was the godfather of the internet early days and growing brands online, and so he's very famous for that. So it's been fascinating working with their team. Um, I think what you've just said is bang on and quite fascinating. And I guess there's a myriad of ways to get to them in terms of the brand awareness piece, but then the availability piece obviously takes longer to play out because you've got to get to the relevant catering company behind the university bar, and that's kind of the playbook really. And then it's often complicated because you might have a pay to play or a brand lockout, or in the drinks world, without getting too kind of down in the weeds, there are lots of lockout deals with various kind of drinks brands and paying for contracts, like lots of businesses. So it's quite a complicated landscape. I think the concept of what you said obviously is bang on. And I think also one of the reasons young people aren't drinking, when you get into the data, aren't drinking so much publicly, is that they're very aware of their social sort of persona in very much the way that Gen X didn't need to be. When I mentioned earlier partying when no one was looking, I met my husband at the Cannes Film Festival on the back of a boat. He was a film publicist. I was a journalist. I was never that badly behaved, but not trying to be sort of facetious. But actually, would I have wanted people to watch me partying? No. And they're all very aware of that, because one misstep and your corporate career could be over. I mean, any young person knows they've grown up as digital natives, and anyone might have a camera at any point, right? I mean, that's a very different concept, I think, of socializing. So that's one of the really key moments. What also is quite surprising, maybe, about data when we get into it more deeply is the actual interest in non-alcoholic beverages and drinking less cuts right across every demographic, right up to boomers. So actually, everybody is cutting down. It's just that the reasons for doing so are very nuanced. So, and I guess the younger generation gets so much oxygen because of the social media piece, and we're always hearing about them and they shout about it. Whereas the boomers, they're actually cutting down on alcohol, but we're not seeing them so much visibly talking about it on social media. So that is quite surprising, because I remember thinking it was just the young people. And then we got into the data and it cuts right up. And that's where I think you realize just how big the opportunity is.
Well, and it's amazing opportunity. And I think that my demographic seems to be a little bit older, but and a lot of women watch me, and I think it's important for them to have this on your Thanksgiving at Thanksgiving.
Right.
This at Christmas. This at Christmas parties. And I'm holding, if you're listening to me and you're not watching me on YouTube and you're just listening to this podcast on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, I'm holding up a bottle of Noughty champagne. And I don't want it to be triggering. If somebody has an alcohol problem and you are an alcoholic, I don't want you to feel as though this would trigger you. I can tell you it's never been triggering for me. I haven't had a drink in 18 years, as you guys all know, over 18 years. My husband, 26. And you know, this doesn't trigger us. It actually makes me feel like I'm a member of the crowd and I don't have to feel so strange. And I bring this and we toast to this, and we toast when my son, I mentioned earlier before we went live, my son just got engaged and he came
Congratulations.
back with his fiance. They got engaged in Nice, actually. And they came home and to visit us, and because he lives in Austin. You spoke of Austin. And by the way, and I'll go back to Austin in a second, but I wanted to toast something to my son, because I will tell you, when I quit drinking 18 plus years ago, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to have a glass of champagne and toast my children when they get married. I thought, this is going to be terrible. And the reality is that I now have something wonderful to drink and
Uh,
toast my children that's bubbly. And it doesn't have to make me feel different or strange. It doesn't have any alcohol in it, you guys. And it's delicious. And it's
I'm
not
so
filled
happy.
with sugar, and it's not filled with junk, and it's delicious. And I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm celebrating my daughter. And now, because for me, I have one drink, I have many, and I don't want to do that anymore. So here I am sober, and I want to be proud, but that doesn't, I don't want to feel different. And I, again, want to celebrate. And there's so many wonderful things to celebrate. And having this option, and when people come to your house for a holiday, and having them see Noughty and teaching young kids that are home for the holidays, like, look what's out there, you guys. It's not just this Martinelli's, yucky, not to, I don't want to say terrible things about it, but it's filled with sugar. But this is actually in a beautiful bottle. It looks beautiful on your bar and on your table, and you don't feel so yucky.
I'm so, so, so blown away by those beautiful sentiments. Congratulations about the impending engagement. And that really sums up why I created Naughty, for people like you and moments like that. And what you also summarized so acutely for me was, why should alcohol be the crux of celebration? You can have delicious bubbles. They haven't got alcohol. It's still celebratory. That is just so important. And you also touched on something that was very interesting, I thought, which was, I'm delighted that you celebrate your drinking Naughty and everybody knows you're famously sober. But equally, for people who, for all number of reasons, don't want to discuss their sobriety or their secret pregnancy or whatever reason, you can still be, equal seat at the table, enjoying Naughty. You don't even have to talk about it if you don't want to. Either way, you know what I mean, Elizabeth?
Oh, I completely know what you mean, Amanda. I mean, this is the craziest thing, is that I have a friend of mine who's a doctor, and he's kind of a new friend, and he was talking to me, my husband, and he said, did you see what just came out in Women's Journal about how bad, where was, I'm going to tell you where it was exactly. He sent it to me yesterday and he goes, do you know how bad alcohol is for your body? Do you know how many cancers are associated with? And I think it's totally due to the sugar, what you just spoke about. And knowing that, and that there is an alternative that tastes, it's pretty, it looks good, and you can have it, and it's healthy. Because here, I'll tell you where it was. Let me tell you, here it is. Experts reveal the real truth about alcohol and health and how it's more shocking than you think. And that's in Women's Health.
Wow.
That just
Yeah.
came out. So knowing that this is an alternative. And again, you guys, it's in a beautiful bottle. And I love being sober, and I want everybody that's out there to have an alternative that makes them feel like, again, included, because so many people these days are feeling lonely, feeling outcasted, feeling bad about something about themselves. I mean, we were talking about before we went on, like how hard it is with like children these days, and how much, there's a word for it and I just lost it. But how we're like our families are falling apart. Let's just say it.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And if we can come together and not have alcohol, because alcohol seems, when you have family and alcohol, I've seen many too many, meals that have blown up due to alcohol. And to have something that is non-alcoholic, but still is pretty in a glass, and it is still a beautiful product. As you guys all heard, it's organic and everything else. And it is amazing. And I really think that we need to be proud and embrace this new culture that we have that is going on in our society today. My last question: do you have any new products we should know about?
I have an elevated red coming out fall next year. You heard it here first. And we are also elevating our still branding. I'm really comfortable with our beautiful labels, but I felt like I wanted more complexity to our still labels. I wanted them to have a bit more of a tactile feel. You so kindly mentioned the romanticism of our champagne style sort of bottle, and I
Yes,
wanted to
and look at
feel
this, like this. I mean, look at this. This is beautiful, you guys. And the pink rosé's got a pink, champagne colored um font with, like, it's beautiful and it matches the bottle. But you're changing this.
no, not the sparklings. For our
Okay.
still range, we're just
Okay.
elevating the labels so they're a little more tactile. It was just so important for me to just get the range exactly the way I wanted it, and it already is. But I just felt like we could just do something a little more special there. And then I've got an elevated red. Our red has taken off so beautifully in America that I'm sure you heard it here first. I'm not sure when this is broadcasting. I've really just announced it now. But we're creating a more complex red that will, I think, do really well in restaurants, and also, people like you, or anybody who enjoys a really good glass of non-alcoholic red wine and feels like they'd like something even more complex than our existing Naughty Rouge.
Oh, it's so amazing. You're amazing.
Oh,
Thank you so, so much.
thank
Thank you
you.
for coming back on. And when it comes out, you have to come back on and tell us about the new red that you've made. I can't wait to hear all about it. And happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you, Lizzie. Such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor having you on. And wait a minute, I can't go without asking one last question. So
Oh, yes.
you're at Whole Foods, you're in Sprouts, you're in
Oh,
Total.
so Whole Foods, watch this space. Anyone listening who can help get that Whole Foods deal over the line, that's the one we're working on. Sprouts and Total Wine at the moment across the US.
Well, you
And
would
then,
think you would get
yeah,
into Whole Foods given that Jeff Bezos owns Amazon and you're on Amazon. By the way, she's
Liz,
on Amazon. Are all of your wines on Amazon?
I think so, yeah. And also via our website, which is naughtyaf.com. And that's naughty with an O, just like I've written it on my little
Oh, and
cat.
you guys, if you're out there, All the links are going to be in the description. So all you have to do is click and it will take you right to Noughty's website. Go out, you guys, get this for your tables, please, for your holiday tables and for your bars, because it literally, people need alternatives. And not everybody wants to drink alcohol these days, guys. Let's be honest. So, we're in a new year. It's coming up. It's 2025, and we've got to get healthy, you guys. It's time to get healthy. No more sugar. It's been a pleasure again. Thank you so much. Sending hugs. Thanks again. Thanks, everybody. And until next time, bye. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to Conversations with Busy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, if you could subscribe, that would mean the world to me. And follow me on all social media. And you can also get my newsletter every Friday morning into your inbox. Just go to elizabethchance.com and subscribe. Take care.